Hello and welcome to IMHO. Today I'm speaking to Alex Moss about how search is changing. Alex currently is the principal SEO at Yoast and he's also the founder of Firecask. Alex has been a contributor and a speaker in the industry for at least 15 years and he's been in SEO for at least 20 years. I'm really excited to be speaking to Alex today and I'm going to get straight into it and throw over to you, Alex. In your opinion, how will search change this year and how are you adapting?
How is search not going to change this year is probably an easier question. I would probably cover by saying we're going to be thinking from a strategic point of view way beyond just one search engine, just what's monopolized out there, which is Google. And that's how we've been intrinsically and naturally thinking for maybe a generation now. And now that there's a whole new world out there of ways to discover things, we're going to have to adapt to all of those things. And it reminds me of when social media first blew up into the mass market. And when I say the mass market, I feel like it's from a business point of view, not just from a I have a Facebook account, which is something I've had since maybe 2005. From there, I remember being an SEO, you had to like understand a little bit more about social media, but there was no such thing as a social media specialist at that point. We were them. And then eventually, as it got more popular, more people came out. And I think that that's going to happen again. And there's going to be more AI specific discovery optimization experts out there. And I say discovery because that's what we're working in, a discovery engine. And I think the word search engine is going to become old hat. So when we say is SEO dead, I would say no, the search engine is dead. We're going to be adapting to the wider range of skills and platforms that's available to us to base ourselves on discovery. I would even think about Spotify, for example, as a discovery engine. It's where you discover new music and everything else, like a social platform is also classed as a search engine to some. Like I think that TikTok is a social platform, but I know that kids these days, and I know that Arno was mentioning this in a previous IMHO, is that that's how his kids intake everything, all of the information. So to me, that's a discovery engine now. And as search engine optimizers, we should change the word search engine discovery optimizers, and now we should consider that in the mix, especially because that's coming into the search engine results anyway. So it's being used by Google to get context and help you with your search intent, which is probably the next thing, right? Search intent is something we've been chatting about for a few years now, but I think now is the real focus on what is the intent of the content. I think a lot of content marketers are going to be going back to the drawing board and adapting their skills and getting help from SEOs because keywords are maybe dead in terms of its value or the value for an SEO as a metric to report back on. I know that Carolyn, who's my counterpart in Yoast, and Kevin Digg has been also been mentioning about how keywords are dying off as part of value. But then that comes back to our jobs. Is our jobs devalued? And I would say no. I would actually say that our value is heightened because it's going to be harder to get yourself in the mix. So if you use ChatGPT as a platform, for example, it goes away, it does its research and it brings it back. So I would say maybe the fight to be position 1 to 3 above the fold is now going to be something that's talked about a lot less, but being in that mix is just as important. And then you have to think of what's the intent of the conversational search that goes on in order to get that research. And that's going to be a harder job for everyone to do things. And adapting this year is going to be exciting, I would say. It's because none of us, I don't think any SEO is going to be able to predict what's really going to happen in the next 12 months. And I don't think anyone who was making their 2024 predictions are going to have their stuff spot on, other than concentrate on AI platforms. Of course, that's going to be true. And there's so many that's going to come out there. I feel like this year is going to be, there's been a lot of, it's been hectic last year, I would say. And this year is going to be that balance and the waves are going to calm a bit. And by this time next year, I think we'll know where the real direction of what we do as a day to day is really going to cement itself. And this year is figuring out exactly what that answer is. How do we navigate that? I mean, reading all the publications that we all write and work for, which is great. That's going to be really good. And the main source of my information as well is doing things like that. But I think that the people are going to find their home on their AI platforms this year. They're going to find out which one's for them. So if you're buying a car, I always say you're either a Mercedes or a BM person if you're looking for that kind of car. And there's no explanation to say why you like Merc and why you like BM. It's just a personal preference. And I think that's starting now. A lot of people say ChatGPT, and that to me is the Google of the AI platform world at the moment. But I think more people, more normies, normal people who are not in this day in, day out are going to start saying the word perplexity to me. They're going to start saying the word Gemini as a thing that they use without us having to tell them to actually find and discover those platforms. And I think that's going to be really interesting. And then it'll pave the way for what's going to happen in the next couple of years for us and for the platforms. So yeah, Gemini, I think, is going to be really interesting to see what they do because, like we were saying just before we came on air, Google, I feel as though they missed the boat a little bit, and if they just concentrated 12 to 18 months prior to reacting to what OpenAI was doing, I feel as though Gemini might have been the ChatGPT today already and been ahead of the game. And I feel as though that threat is now taken seriously. The things like DeepSeek being produced so quickly, questionable how it was made and all of those things that go with it, but it shows that the pace of which things are getting shipped is very, very fast. And what we do know is that if it's fast now, in a year's time, we're going to say how slow that progress was. So it's going to be harder and harder to keep up with everything that we do. But again, I think it increases the value of the people who are really skilled, and it will show the mediocrity of some brands, I believe. So another hectic year ahead, I think.
Yeah, you see, I mean, the way I've been looking at it for the fact, oh, I've actually been saying this for a long time. I've always felt that SEO is more part of marketing than other people would think. And I think now that is very much coming to fruition as search is becoming fractured across many channels. One thing I picked up that I found quite interesting was a quote that you said that you feel the perception of SEO as purely a marketing function is misguided, which is slightly counter to what I think. I thought that was really interesting. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I'm sure that a lot of SEOs might relate that, especially if you work in house, it's like you're not placed in the best place all the time, and sometimes you are shoved in marketing, and you're like you're not in the marketing team, you're in like the IT team because you're techie sometimes, but then the tech department might not consider you a techie because you're part of marketing and you're in the marketing team. So it's very hard to be inside a marketing team when really you should be defining what's happening in the marketing team and have a real say in the strategy and the long-term strategy of a brand because of what we know on how people discover things, which again goes back to discovery. I always think that an SEO's role should permeate all departments in a company. It should actually help provide insight on where to go with your product or service based
Yeah.
on the trends that are happening. It should be part of your marketing because there's no point in a marketing team going after keywords when keywords value is getting less and less, and we should be thinking about more intent and diversifying the channels that we're marketing in and understanding also the real audience of who's on it. So I'll use TikTok as an example. I don't use TikTok at all, maybe because I'm old and I don't like the app and it tells me that I need to agree to loads of things. But actually, I also am self-aware that I may be old-fashioned in that way and that there's a whole audience out there who do nothing but take and discover that audience in there. But that also means that that isn't the answer for everyone. Just how LinkedIn, like if I use the BM and Merck example before, one channel in LinkedIn may be much better than Reddit for another company, maybe much better than TikTok for another. And I think it's really important that you focus on where you are taking your strategy this year and which channels you choose. Choose them wisely, but also don't neglect things that might hamper discovery elsewhere. And that's where it comes into Reddit. I don't really use Reddit that much as a consumer. I am now because Google's showing it, putting it in front of my face on a lot of things, and I have been in it a little bit more. But it does go back to the third party perspectives, and the openness of opinions of people's brands and products are going to really be more important. And I think it also goes back to EEAT and SEOs sometimes are very black and white. Is it a ranking factor or not? If it isn't, it's not something we should concentrate on. I disagree with that because I look at the wider discoverability of something, and I think that EEAT, not just in terms of SEO, but in general in terms of marketing, that should be really important focus because the more you harness that, the more people are going to trust you. The more people trust you, the more they'll talk about you in a positive way, and the more that happens, the more discoverable you will be as a brand or as a person or as an entity, which I think is going to be quite an important thing to do this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think obviously it looks like the key word here is going to be discovery. So instead of before where it was search, the emphasis now is very much on discovery. And as you say, finding your audience where your audience is across different channels instead of having I mean, it's been very easy for us, hasn't it? And a search for the last 20 years has been easy because the audience has been in one place on Google, whereas now you're going to have to look to different channels to find it. Do you think that this might impact on the structure of how agencies? I mean, obviously you've run an agency for how long did you have Firecast? Is it 10 years you've had Firecast?
It was
Um,
formed in 2013, so it's coming up to
yeah.
12 years this year.
Yes. Yes. You've got a
Um,
lot of experience in an agency. I mean, how do you feel that the structure in an agency might change with this new perspective?
like before when I was saying that social media was part of the SEO's remit until it became so big that it can become its own thing, that's what's going to happen here. And I think the biggest change, weirdly, isn't going to come from techies because I believe that we are relied upon less than we were 5, 10 years ago. And I think that as the years go on, the less techies are going to be needed because um tech's going to improve and it's going to be better. But I think the content marketers and general marketers are going to adapt more than they think they need to go alongside how you discover things. And I think that when we keep saying SEO is dead, I think the phrase SEO is on its way out. And I think using the word discovery is apt because that's what search engines are. They are discovery engines, not search engines. And back then, the word search was the best way to do so because there wasn't any other way of discovering anything, like you said, unless you're in a forum, which to me is a social platform like Reddit. So now that that's widened, there's going to be different ways to discover things, and I think this will be the rise of discovery optimization experts. Whether SEOs move into that, whether content marketers go towards that, and especially social media marketers will become discovery marketers. And I think that's going to be, I'm hoping, because in a year I can say I was right. So I'm hoping that may be a thing that happens. But I do feel like the word discovery is going to be the term of the year, and I think people are using it more because that's the best way to describe how to find a brand, a product, or a service out on the web, whether it's within a search engine or some other kind of platform.
Yeah, I think I'm going to rebrand myself once again as a discovery optimization expert this year. Just actually one question I'm going to throw at you. I'm not sure. I hope you'll be able to answer this. Obviously, because you work at Yoast, um, how is this actually impacting on tools? I mean, how is Yoast managing with the all the changes that are going on?
Well, some of it is still very strong structurally. So you've got things like schema, which is, in my opinion, always. I know that some people like, I don't know. I know Jarno was on before, and he may have said that maybe schema isn't going to be important as the years go on. But I always think that if there's a platform that likes to be fed information, feed it in the best way possible, and that information is best placed with structured data. So I don't think that's going anywhere. And I think that from a product point of view, that's always going to stay there because it's the acceptable format of how to produce content and data on the internet. Um, but also, we've been going more into how AI helps the user. So not just saying, hey, we have AI powered this and AI powered that, but like, what does it actually mean? What's the role of AI in our products itself, and how can it be used? Not just to say that we have AI in it, because I find sometimes that's a bit of a gimmick. Sometimes AI is being used for everything for years, right? It's just now it's kind of a fashionable term to say that that's what you do. It's like It's like me opening up a new page on Firecask and saying we do AI optimization as a service. Like we kind of have been doing that the whole time. It's the same kind of ethics and the same kind of job. It's just for different platforms. But as a product, yeah, I think it's the way in which people work and publish content on the web. I think that some people are more cautious about producing content on the web because of two things. A, their site can be punished very severely. And we've seen that with things like core updates and HCU. And I have to admit, whilst I'm sure that in the grand scale of updates, it might have done good for the web, but I also am very much looking at these small publishers who've been absolutely rinsed within 24 hours and on sites that I don't believe even deserve it. And it was a very mixed bag of, well, it's not helpful content. And but it was it because I found a lot of helpful content that was penalized. So I think that distrust of Google also is going to make people really think about how they produce content in the future, and it has to be a lot more strategic. And I've always said don't make content for the sake of search engines, make it for the user, and that's always been the ethics. And I also think that it goes back to the webmaster guidelines, right, that were made over 20 years ago. Reread what they were saying 20 years ago and it hasn't actually changed that much. Don't mess about with the algorithm. Don't try and abuse it, or we will penalize you. And whilst they get it wrong, they also get it right a lot more. But I don't know. Google did skip a beat a bit, and I think they've also shot themselves in the foot because the bad results that we've been getting, that Lily probably spent every other hour last year reporting, has really made. That's where the normies have actually seen differences and they're starting to go elsewhere, which is causing a big shift. Even though it's only 1 or 2% of the market share, that's a huge, huge shift. And if that continues, it's going to be very interesting to see how Google plays themselves this year with that. But back to what you were saying. I think publishers are now more cautious about the content that they produce again because they might get penalized because it might get stolen and put into a zero click. So we've seen some recent studies as well that CTR is going way down because they're just getting the answer. But I can't help but agree with the end user that you are getting the most helpful answer on the result page. So why would I click into that? So I agree with that part, but as an owner, I very much agree with their argument that maybe you should get people into the site and help with them to produce content even more in the future.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, at SEJ, we've become much more focused on the content that we're producing, much more expert-led, and we've actually moved away from keywords now, and we're very much focused on building our content around products. But yeah, that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, Alex, we've obviously been talking. We're sort of coming to a close now, and it's been really great to get your short, punchy take on where we are right now. So I will say thank you very much for offering me your honest opinion, and hope to speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Shelley. Until next time.
Thank you.